I'm not the biggest Sailor Moon fan. I have a lot of respect for it, for how big it was and what it gave to the magical girl genre. But personally, it's
you don't have to sandbag it. It's fine. We're not.
I was thinking for a second. I was like, wait, is Mumi talking to me or is he talking to Colin?
Colin, you want to do the intro?
Hello and welcome to the Weeb Crew. I'm your host, Psyotic, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mumi.
I'm no one special.
And we have a guest on today for the first time in, it feels like forever, honestly, animator Colin Armistead. Did I get your last name right?
Hi, that's me. Yeah, that's my last name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I get it right after I've already potentially butchered
I was like, wait a minute. We should have probably.
Exactly it.
I've only been talking for like 10 minutes. You could have at any point.
Well, I mean, Colin, yeah, thanks for coming on.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're in for a nice casual discussion that won't touch on anything potentially controversial whatsoever.
No, not at all. No.
It's I would say it's funny because this let's be clear, this podcast we had, like, I had this idea at least because I'd known about Miracle-chan coming out for a while, and I was like, Mumi,
oh wow,
Mumi, we should get this guy on. We should have him on so we can talk about this cool thing that he's doing. And then it came out, and I was like, we got to send that invite now. And there's like, oh, then there's like all this disagreement and contention around it. So this is not a podcast born of controversy. We've never talked about anything controversial on here ever before.
No,
the drama podcast.
Weeb Crew. We do have like the View stream set up. The crew set up specifically for drama. But yeah, I guess like for anybody that might not be familiar with your stuff, I guess you want to kind of plug anything that you kind of been working on, or what you kind of do online, or what people might know you from other than maybe the titular Angelic Kitty Miracle-chan that we were going to be talking about.
Yeah, I'm a character animator, kind of first and foremost, and obviously this film was me trying to get into live action because that's a thing I really love, but I do mostly animated shorts and illustration and character designs, and kind of pretty much getting sort of my hands in every pie because that's just what I like doing. And I've been posting my art online for quite a while now, so that's where I've been able to kind of build a type of audience.
Try to cultivate the Renaissance man archetype.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's how I first came across your stuff, is you were like posting like either Miracle-chan art or just some other like anime art on Twitter. I'm like, damn, this is a really good riff on like Akio Watanabe's art style. I'm gonna click follow.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess like kind of getting into it. Maybe we'll skirt around it with some pillow boxing first. How did you get into anime specifically?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I was really, really obsessed with Alice in Wonderland and like the Lewis Carroll books of Through the Looking Glass.
Oh yeah.
Using like my mom's like first generation iPhone with like a big OtterBox case, I would look up any adaptation I could and like try to see if I could see every single adaptation ever done of Alice. And then eventually at my local library, there was a manga called Alice in the Country of Hearts, which was like a kind of like an isekai, I guess, of like Alice, and she goes to Wonderland, and then she meets all these like hot guys. We're like, oh, the Mad Hatter's a hot guy, and like, oh, who do I love? Like, I think it was based on a visual novel or something.
Yeah,
and I got really, really into that because obviously, it being Alice based was like a great in for me. And then from that, I got really into like a lot of like clamp anime, like Chobits and stuff like that. Very, not particularly the most unique way to get into anime, but and then I got super into Vocaloid, super mega into like everything to do with Vocaloid, and I became a super huge anime nerd, and I was the only anime nerd in my school growing up.
So you had a very similar experience to anyone growing up in the early 2000s, essentially.
Exactly, yeah.
So if you watched a lot of Alice in Wonderland adaptations, did you ever check out Alice in Cyberland?
The name is definitely ringing a bell. Let me very quickly look that up.
Well, I was trying to think.
I think this is one of those things that I would avoid because it wasn't like Alice enough for me. For me, it had to be like, it couldn't just be something with Alice or Wonderland or Looking Glass in the name. It had to be very specifically like Alice Little from the Lewis Carroll book, because that's what I like the most.
I'm trying to remember.
I will recommend you. This is a terrible recommendation, but there is a movie, a 44-minute movie, so it's not too long, called Alice in Dreamland.
Yes, that's what I was trying to remember the name of.
I could tell the gears were turning when I heard you talking a second ago. But this is an interesting piece. Like maybe someone with a background in film, you might have an appreciation for it.
Oh, I'm looking at pictures right now. This looks perfect. This looks amazing. Because I also really I think dolls are really interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it does like the stop motion. It's like an interesting blend of like stop motion and like puppetry and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the visuals are very weird and strange, which I guess is very appropriate for the Alice in Wonderland adaptation.
Because my favorite adaptation of Alice is the 1988 Jan Svankmajer film, and they do a lot of dolls and taxidermy stop motion. And just having that kind of really uncomfortable backbone to it, I think to me that makes it like the best. So this looks like really up my alley.
Yeah, check it out for sure. It's a trip.
I was also thinking of what is it, the because like Clamp did like an adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, didn't it?
Yeah, I thought they did. I can't remember what the name of it. I'm sure it might just be Clamp's Alice in Wonderland.
No, so there's two things. There's Miyuki-chan in Wonderland, which is just Alice in Wonderland.
That one.
But now every character is like a cute girl. I think I remember the Queen of Hearts is like into like BDSM or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at a photo right now. It looks crazy.
And then there's something called Clamp in Wonderland. And I've not seen this, so I have no idea what that is.
I think that one's like a spin-off where it's like Clamp characters.
Yeah, that's what that was. I remember that.
Yeah. I never watched it, but I vaguely remember it through osmosis. Yuki-chan was interesting. I think that one would fall probably under that probably falls under the not Alice in Wonderland enough, but it was
only more than Cyberland.
Yeah.
I see a rabbit. I see a dress with an apron. That's enough for me.
Alice in Cyberland, it is more like. Have you seen Serial Experiments Lain?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, it's like the prototype of that, because it's a lot of the same people who did Lane, so it's like a prototype of that where it's like, okay, they're going into like this digital space and there are cyber terrorists and stuff happening, and it's like, okay, that's interesting.
It is not anything tonally like
tonally it is completely different.
I didn't assume from the pictures.
I feel like you'd be like, oh, it's just like Lane, and everyone's gonna get the wrong impression.
It's
you mentioned Clannad, or not? Sorry, Chobits, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned Chobits. Is that one of your favorite anime?
I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I'm definitely nostalgic for it. Definitely.
What would you say are some of your favorites then?
Oh, I don't have necessarily the most eclectic taste, but my favorites definitely, like top of my head easily, would be Nichijou. I remember watching that when that came out. Amazing. Okay. Madoka Magica, obviously. Perfect Blue, which I remember when I saw that when I was in middle school. I literally could not stop thinking about it to this day. I think those are the ones that I think of like first and foremost. Oh, and Alien 9. I love Alien 9.
Man after my own heart. Yeah, people would say that's boring, but that's in line with me. That's
I like it when it's a little boring.
But boring just means it's good. That just means everyone agrees.
Non-pejorative. Yeah.
You need to have more. You need to have more hot takes, okay?
No, I do. Maybe I'm like, oh, Aiken, my favorite anime.
Oh god, we just watched. We watched Aiken like a couple weeks ago.
Me and my friends we regularly, because I showed them it, and they're obsessed with it. They think it's the funniest thing in the world. So they keep putting it on when we're at events. I'm like, guys,
just in public, you're like, check this out.
Yeah, we'll be in the computer labs.
We need an Aiken reboot, honestly.
Exactly. We need more, a feminist retelling.
A feminist retelling. They just really own their boobs.
What's
the intersectional feminist reimagining of Aiken?
What's that Megan Fox movie? Jennifer's Body. We needed the Jennifer's Body adaptation of Aiken.
Yes, I see that vision clearly.
Maybe we just need a feminist deconstruction of the original Aiken.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I also used to watch when I was in elementary school way too much Bludgeoning Angel Dokuro-chan. I used to think that shit was so fucking funny.
That's
the one where she's she's like wrestling moves on everyone, right?
No, she has a spiked bat and kills the protagonist all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I think literally, when else in anime are you going to see a complete insistence on having really cute characters, but doing just the most disgusting poop diarrhea humor?
It's kind of a dying breed. I can't think of the last comedy anime. I mean, a lot of early 2000s OVAs had that kind of humor, but not really been a thing anymore.
It's real. I mean, I guess they're bringing Panty and Stocking back. We're supposed to get a new finally getting season 2 of that.
I think Asobi Asabase is the closest thing to that's come out relatively recently.
That I could think of, maybe. That's well over 5 years old at least.
Is that the one where they scream a lot?
They don't. I don't think they scream. It's associated with screaming because the ED is them basically doing death growl, screamo music. I guess they scream.
Oh yeah, the voice actor. I really love. I watched very little of this anime, but I really loved the voice acting. It reminded me a lot of what I liked about Nichijou when I first saw it when I was a lot younger, because just their willingness to just go completely balls to the walls bananas.
Yeah, go full ham.
I love that. That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's it gave me kind of Nichijou vibes and also Boss Baby vibes. So the people listening cannot see this, but since you mentioned Madoka, we have to address the elephant in the room here. Your profile picture is of Charlotte, who very famously in Madoka Magica decapitates Mommy. So why do you hate Mommy?
I actually love Mommy. She was my first ever Figma. Don't get it twisted. However, I liked Mommy a lot when I was younger because every time you'd buy a Mommy figure, it would come with Charlotte.
Oh, it would?
Yeah, the Figma did, the Nendoroid did. Most of them did.
And then they redesigned Charlotte for some reason into Bebe.
Yeah.
Into what?
I'm not really. Yeah, have you seen Rebellion?
I have not seen Rebellion still.
Oh.
It's a rebuild situation where I keep putting it off for I'm waiting for the next movie to come out, and then I'm like, all right, then I will watch the movies.
Have you seen Rebellion, Colin?
Oh my goodness. I remember watching Rebellion without subtitles, cam ripped at 3 a.m. On some weird site that was giving my family computer 30 viruses. On Christmas Eve.
That was probably the terrible that camera had I want to say it was 35% of the screen was cut off.
Yeah,
and it was zoomed
GIFs of that same exact camera.
I remember that camera. I avoided that and spoilers for I want to say a month or two.
Damn, you're a lot stronger than I am.
It was hard, honestly. It was kind of worth it when you're watching Rebellion in the theater with people that weren't expecting it, and that the ending happens. Literally the whole room gets deflated. Like it was just confused. That was like, I was like, this is the best part of the whole movie.
That would have been awesome to see in a theater because, like, coming from my little podunk town, I was like a 6th grader when that movie came out.
Oh yeah, damn, you're making me feel old now. Fuck, how old was I? I was 21.
It's like the same thing.
There's
a
6th grade.
Yeah, same thing.
Time's a flat circle.
Yeah, wait, what year did it come out? Was that like 2012, 2013?
That was like 2013, I think.
Yeah, 2013 was Rebellion.
Damn.
Yeah, it was a long ass fucking time ago. So what do you like about Madoka? Is it the magical girl aspect?
I think it came at a point when I liked things that were kind of benign and superfluous, like fun character designs, but it also had like a lot of thematic depth. And because I remember I got into it because I saw a clip of the scene where Charlotte kills Mommy, like right when that came out, and my love was created on that day, and
immediately drawn to it because of decapitated children.
I mean, what else draws you to anything? But I mean,
how do you think it's held up? I guess I'm assuming you watched more Magical Girls since then, specifically for research for a specific project.
I think that specific project. I think I think Madoka is really interesting because not only does it hold up really well, but there was a pretty sizable influx of kind of, I'm using the biggest quotations with my hands right now, deconstructionist magical girl anime that kind of came after Madoka that really couldn't really do what it did because Madoka's appeal wasn't that it's a fucked up magical girl anime. Guys, this is fucked up. This ain't your mom's magical girls. Like, Madoka is at its base a very, very normal magical girl anime because it's all about hope. It doesn't have like, it's not a doomer anime. It's all about hope. And so that ability to like be really like thematically dense, but also still be at the end of the day a really hopeful show, I really liked. But it still holds up incredibly well, I think, because I know people that get into it nowadays who I know, and they're always blown away by it.
Yes, as someone that's gotten more and more into magical girl stuff, like I feel like what Madoka is actually commentating on gets more salient. I know people like to point out like, oh, Madoka's not dark because it's doing the same. Sailor Moon did this too, and it's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point.
Mm-hmm.
It was never like supposed to be like contrastly darker or anything. It's like you said, it's just a magical girl show.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's commentating. It does have like a bone to pick, I think, with like something like Sailor Moon or like Precure. And I think it does so pretty interestingly. And that kind of, yeah, like you say, it kind of gets lost a bit with the sort of trends of cashing in on the dark magical girl stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But,
like what? Like Magical Girl Sight. What else? What else are the ones?
Sight, Daybreak Illusion. I wouldn't say Yuki Yuna. Yuki Yuna is not very dark. It's fine. Raising Project's kind of dark, but I wouldn't say like it's bad by any means. It's just kind of okay.
Mm-hmm.
It at least like has some reverence for the genre. But yeah, there's fucking endless list you go down. But that's all. That's all stuff that came out in the last decade or so.
Yeah,
it seems like you were watching a bit more like 80s stuff, from what you kind of read.
Yeah, when I kind of stopped looking at what was going on with anime when I was in like middle school. And then once I entered high school, I got really, really into 80s magical girl anime. And I think a big part of that probably is that we were having this sort of online interest in the 80s with like the popularity of vaporwave and series like, say, Stranger Things, like using 80s aesthetics. So I wasn't in any way sort of exempt from the zeitgeist. But I think a lot of 80s magical girl anime appealed to me so much because this is before magical girls became like fighters, and it was more based on playing on that sort of childhood want of being able to transform into an adult and then like not be a child but be able to transform back, because that's what pretty much like most of them were doing. They weren't just transforming into nice outfits, they were transforming into just adult versions of themselves. And when I was, because I got into it when I was 15, I think it really kind of spoke to that point that you reach where you're like not a child but you're not an adult, and like you're playing both roles in life where sometimes you have to be the child and sometimes you have to be the adult. So this sort of this big group of series of magical girl anime from that time kind of spoke to that feeling, I think.
It's interesting because a lot of those are about like almost like the performativity of like being an adult or being a woman specifically, I guess. And it very much leans into like those gender roles, but also like kind of is trying to expand them because you probably read like Miki Momo, how it was kind of made specifically alongside like the feminist movement in Japan. So you kind of give me a second. Okay. You kind of see how they were trying to like demonstrate that like, oh, you don't just have to be a nurse or a school teacher. You can be a horse jockey or a thief or whatever. Like, you can be whatever. Like the woman's role is not just like isolated to these specific sort of things. Like you can be whatever. And the magical genre kind of grew alongside that movement, where it's a lot of it's all about kind of like finding your place within a community and kind of how you are going to fit in said community, and like gives you the opportunity to kind of perform being an adult. Because like a lot of them, even when they're like transformed, they're still a child, like in like mentally or whatever. They're just performing this role of a creamy mommy or Erica or whatever, like whoever. And so it was kind of interesting because like I didn't think about it until I was like reading an interview you did where you're talking about how that kind of resonated with how did you word it? Like the being able to transform into like your ideal self kind of resonated with the like kind of like mentality you have going through like any kind of dysphoria. I never really thought of it from that perspective. I guess that's like a blind biases on my part, right? But like it was interesting to kind of think about it because like, yeah, because there is a level of like performativity in gender, right? Like you kind of have to perform being a man or being a father or being a woman or being like that level of performativity that's just kind of inherent to acting out in society. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the performativity in like a magical girl show where they're performing being an adult or being an idol or being a nurse or whatever they are. So it was interesting when you said that because I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know why I never that never like clicked.
Well, it's interesting because they're very similar to something like Alice in Wonderland in that regard, where like Alice in Wonderland is obviously a coming of age story, and something that like I've been working on a video talking about isekai, and I've been thinking about this connection that I've made between like the like magical girl like transformation sequence as kind of being like a condensed version of that sort of like, Wonderland liminal space where, the transformation sequence itself is like, it is like the process of growing up. That is like the coming of age story, just now condensed into a 30-second animation sequence that we can put in every episode.
Yeah.
I think another part of why sort of 80s, I mean, because it's children anime. It was made for children at the time. And I think another part of why that appealed to me at that point was because this is when sort of anime that was getting really popular with things like ReZero or Darling in the Franxx And as like a kind of, at the time, very staunch Tumblr user feminist, this kind of like fairly sexist, no, not sexist, sexless anime, I think appealed to me and sort of was a way to get me kind of back into a medium that I kind of fell out of because of other interests.
Did you ever watch Idol Densetsu Erika-chan?
I know the name. I'll look it up right now.
That one has an interesting first episode.
Oh, I've seen the opening to this. Absolutely.
I think the first episode ends with her magic like failing or dissipating while she's on stage, and she's just like basically has the dream of going to class naked in front of everybody, except she's on stage. That was the first thing I thought when you said sexless. I'm like, well, mostly. Eroticism, probably.
Watch this. I do not like this character design at all.
So what do you
have a spin-off? Because I think I'm recognizing one of the other characters.
I don't think so. It's
pink-haired girl.
It's kind of in the lineage of those Puro magical girls, so like Cream Mommy, Persia, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it had a spin-off or anything though.
Not that I can tell.
Maybe it's just like a crossover or something.
So what would you say that is you watch anime for? Like, what is it you're kind of looking out for or drawn to in shows?
It's hard to say because I feel like it changes so much depending on kind of where I'm at in my life. Because every time that I've been really into anime, it's been for kind of different reasons. But I think nowadays it's usually because here in the West, we just don't get a lot of adult-oriented 2D animation, and I'm a 2D animator, so I like to see more of that. Because personally, as much as I like a lot of Western animation, most of it is stuff for a lot younger of an audience, and that doesn't really appeal to me. But a lot of Japanese animation, a lot of anime has like a really, really strong focus on like really intricate character designs and really, really, really amazing animation. Granted, it's usually pretty limited, but I much prefer animation that is more kind of technically has like good character drawing draftsmanship and a really good sense of volume, and that's much, much more common in anime than it is here in the West.
Yeah, like when I think of like American adult, like there is like interesting stuff like Scavenger's Reign, but then you also get stuff like just gross comedies, basically.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, I don't think this is funny. I'm gonna go watch the something else instead, which is interesting because it's like, especially with a lot of like, there's that kind of like criticism now too of magical girl anime, where it used to be a genre primarily aimed at young girls or even just children in general. Like that's kind of like someone like Sailor Moon was like popular with girls, but also fairly popular with young boys as well. And now everyone points to Madoka as kind of being like, now magical girl anime are for adults only, which I don't really think is true, but it is like indicative of a kind of interesting trend in that regard, where it's like now it's like a lot of stuff airing late at night instead of early in the morning, when kids usually watch stuff, telling a lot more darker stories, quote unquote.
I mean, I'll always think that I'm not the biggest Sailor Moon fan. I have a lot of respect for it, for how big it was and what it gave to the magical girl genre. But personally, it's
you don't have to sandbag it. It's fine. We're not.
Just me having like a gun to my head saying this, but but I think I do have the littlest bone to pick with it because I do prefer, in a sense, the pre-Sailor Moon kind of emphasis on less Super Sentai crime fighting and more just kind of like, oh, we have to do something and me turning into an adult is going to help us solve the problem. Where then after, because the amount of times that I've heard people say like, oh, Sailor Moon was the first ever magical girl anime, and I'm like, oh my god, stop it.
You know my pain.
Exactly, yeah.
That might be exactly why you like Madoka so much. Monica is very critical of those type of shows. Like that's the whole conceit of it. Is it's kind of like there's a weird thing happening in Magical Girls where we're like expecting young girls to reconcile these themes of like being your best and true self, or being able to be anything or do anything, and also being virtuous crime fighters that will then have to put their lives at risk risk their entire like safety and livelihood to protect what is good and just. It's like how do we reconcile these themes and messages to like a 7-year-old girl?
See, I could be remembering completely wrong here, but I remember I think it was the first episode of like the second Sailor Moon season, I think, when Usagi pretty much like has her memory gone and she doesn't have any powers, and then Luna gives her powers back to her, and she's like screaming like, "No, I want a normal life. I want to be a normal girl." And it's so sad. And like I think that's such an interesting sort of angle to take it, because like, no, this isn't escapism. This is hard work she has to do. Like she's constantly having to put her life on the line. She just wants to be a normal girl. That's so sad.
I was so surprised when we watched like that first season of Sailor Moon, and like the ending is like the way like those last few episodes are fairly dark, and then you do get that kind of if anything, it is very similar to how Madoka ends, the TV show, where it's like, all right, things can kind of go back to normal a little bit. Madoka, they're still like magical girls, but things do get better. And then when we finished that first scene as the Sailor Moon, we were like, what the hell? Did they just stop? How are they going to get back to like, how are there 5 more seasons of this?
Everyone clicked here for hot Angelic Miracle-chan takes and discourse, and they're going to get hot Sailor Moon takes instead. Can't wait for those comments.
What I love about Sailor Moon, though, one last thing about Sailor Moon. What I love about Sailor Moon is the amount of times I have been in like someone's like apartment or house, and they have like a bunch of Marvel figures and Disney figures and stuff, and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know how to have a conversation with this person about their interests. And then I see like one little Sailor Moon, and I'm like, oh, I like your Sailor Moon figure. Because I'm like, this is an in.
Got my foot in the door.
Exactly, yeah.
So you kind of touched on this when you were talking about like the animation of anime. When you were kind of gathering materials and kind of researching animating Miracle-chan, did you run any kind of like challenges or anything like that when you were kind of learning how to emulate that?
I think there definitely was a learning curve. A lot of my early art of the character, and even like an animation test I did before I started doing anything, is super like clearly like that kind of stereotypical like anime drawn by a Westerner type style.
Mm-hmm.
And I think especially the animation test I did, I look at it and it's so clearly like, damn, okay, you really need to start actually paying more attention to how this art is drawn structurally to understand how to like emulate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it looks pretty dead on to kind of like the early 2000s. Like Psy kind of mentioned the blanking on his name.
Akio Watanabe.
Akio Watanabe art. I want to say Watanabe. I'm like, no, that's the Bebop guy.
No.
But yeah, it looks like it could be. I mean, obviously, once you kind of get into like the movement of it, you can kind of see, oh yeah, this might be a little bit. You can tell it's not a TV production necessarily, but it looks pretty damn close, honestly. Like you got the style down pretty close.
For me, I was pretty picky with needing to get like kind of that verisimilitude, because it was always intended to like be a part of this live action thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything was written and then I started animating. So I knew that because you could have a cartoon and then have an anime in the cartoon that looks a little off, but because your suspension of disbelief is already being stretched because you're already watching a cartoon, you're going to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're watching something that not only is live action, but also trying to take itself fairly seriously given the subject matter, you have to make sure that fake show in the film feels entirely believable. Like, people aren't going to question it for 1 second.
So would you say that like this experience learning kind of how to adapt that style has given you any kind of greater appreciation for anime as a processor of animation?
I mean, I think just through having to study so much of it, the way that just this intense reliance on like really good anatomy and really efficient animation and really, really strong volumes and color choices. I mean, I feel like I learned so damn much from having worked, having to try to emulate that kind of style. I can't imagine what my art would be like now if I didn't.
Now you can go watch anime and start criticizing it for all the stuff that you've now learned.
Exactly.
That is like visually too, like something I really like about anime is that even if it's not necessarily like there are a lot of like, you know, different frames, particularly like just I don't know what's the word what are the words I'm looking for here. A lot of character animation, I guess. You know, it's very limited, but those limited frames themselves are very well drawn, which is always interesting to me because it's like, yeah, I guess if you're not, if it's not going to technically quote unquote move all that much, then it needs to be like pleasant to look at, like for some other reason. So you need to look at things like the character designs, like the anatomy. So I guess
shot composition.
When it came to like learning that kind of, so I guess it's a two-part question, kind of. Why Akio Watanabe's art style, and then what were you like looking? Because he's done so much stuff. Like, was there anything like specific that you were looking at when sort of like developing that he's done in order to like get that style down?
Specifically Akio Watanabe, because I feel like his style is so intensely emblematic of that time period. Mm-hmm. It kind of feels like the most Moe 2000s art. It takes sort of what makes that style specific to that time period and really pushes it. Mm-hmm. Like the sense of volume in his work is crazy, really, really amazing. And say you look at work from say maybe the 2010s, everything gets a little bit thinner and wispier. Whereas in the 2000s, everything's super solid and they almost look like plastic figures. In a way that I think, as someone who's a huge nerd for really strong volumes in animation, I really, really love, and I think is again so emblematic of that period. And the way that he draws like expressions and faces, it feels so. Compared to any of the other artists I was looking at, like Pop Electromagnetic Wave, I think he's also called, and Kanzaki Hiro, and a bunch of others. Specifically, Akio Watanabe felt like the most emblematic of that kind of type of character and time period that I was really, really trying to get down. And specifically from his work, I was looking at a lot of Popotan, which is insane. Like
I just watched the anime for Popotan, and it's
anime
really
is
sad.
So wonky. It's crazy.
I was watching. I'm like, this is like this is kind of depressing, honestly. Like very bittersweet.
But a lot of the art from that was a huge influence. Also, a lot of the animation he had done for a few visual novels, like animated intros that they get.
Oh yeah,
and those are usually kind of short segments. But because he would be the animator on those, it really just is so emblematic of his style and movement. And those are really, really big for me in terms of trying to get like this specific character feel as emblematic of this time period as possible.
Now you just need to do like an 80s version and you can do Mikimoto's art style.
That would be fun though. That would be really fun.
It's interesting too, because it is it feels thematically relevant to like what Miracle-chan is like talking about, because I think if I remember correctly, there's a bit I don't think it's with Akio Watanabe specifically, but in the Moe Manifesto, someone is talking about his work and this idea that like he kind of, when he's drawing the character, it's like he becomes the character that he's drawing, which is then like interesting, and how that kind of ends up being reflected in what Miracle-chan is talking about in terms of admiring anime characters, wanting to become anime characters, and how that, that sort of tension that exists between your own gender expression and what you want to do with your own body, and, kind of running into that wall of, well, these also aren't real characters.
So I couldn't help but notice in the fake Miracle-chan opening, she seems to get her powers from the internet.
I mean, I originally wanted to write out, like, when I was planning things, I was like, oh, should I write out like a plot outline for this imaginary show? But then I was like, no, like, I should like just keep it like just focus on the film like holistically and not get too worked up over like the inner workings of this thing in the other thing. But when storyboarding the opening, I was like, okay, so she has to get her powers from somewhere. Let's have it tie back to mirroring the live action part. She'll get it from the computer. And that was like the thought process behind that. So not a lot of thought was put too much into the internal logic of the fake anime. It just had to kind of like thematically all tie back to stuff that's then going to happen in the live action.
See, now I'm going to need you to go back and do like a whole TV series about the dog magical girl alien thing and her getting her powers from the internet and them having fun or whatever's happening in that show. I don't know what's happening in the show.
It feels like an anime opening for what it's like. It does have that kind of like, I can generally glean what this is about from like the quick visuals that are being shown.
Yeah, I'm glad.
I do feel like there was more of like an emphasis on making like a clippable character moment than maybe like a story or something. Like a lot of openings will try to like condense the show in some way, and like they show you visuals kind of like, oh, this is what's gonna. I feel like the opening you did kind of was more focused on, having like the clip moment for maybe like a GIF or something, like the her doing the hip thrust. I'm just like, what do you mean by this? What is happening in the show?
I knew that I needed like that before the chorus part that just kind of explains the story, like more or less, which is like, she's a magical girl. She gets her powers from the internet. It's a bell. There's this other villain character. But the rest of it just kind of needed to be like
fun visuals.
selling you on like, look how wonderful this character is. Isn't she so likable? Like, look how much because like the first thing that happens in the intro is like just a bunch of flashing images of her just doing stuff. So for me, it was all about just kind of selling how likable this character is. Look, so that you can believe why this person would like be like, oh, she's admirable, I guess, in some kind of way.
Buy our figures. Buy the wand.
I didn't see what was it. It was like a fake figure advertisement, and it's like, I'd buy Miracle-chan merch.
Yeah, I saw you posted the Nendoroid announcement. Where's our Miracle-chan Nendoroid coming out?
Oh yeah, I remember I did that because I already had that drawing as like a concept for the chibi version, and then not everybody, but like Good Smile Company and stuff was posting like the new figure releases during whatever that one festival is, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I was like, what would be funny?
It does seem like you put together. Sorry, go.
There's just so many figures during that festival that they post, and I'm like, oh, them? Okay.
Hey, they started doing like VTuber and Hololive figures. They're not doing anime shit anymore. Just they can do.
They did like Lane recently though.
Yeah, they did do Lane.
Here's Lane. Here's Snoopy. I'm like, okay. Here's Nichijou. Okay.
I've always kind of like tongue in cheek said Nendoroids are like the pop figures of Japan. They're definitely not. That'd be more like a Chupoche or something. Yeah, like the Funko Pops. The more time goes on and the more they just start making Nendoroids of literally anything, the more true that becomes.
They're so much better than Funko Pops.
It's never for the characters I want.
They're getting like, I feel like they're now kind of scraping into like just whatever. Like there for a while they were doing like Disney Nendoroids. I'm like, okay, there's so many freaking Disney characters. I don't need a genie Nendoroid or whatever the fuck. But now they're getting into like Lane. They did the medicine seller from Mononoke recently.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and then they did like Saint Tail and the girl from Shugochara. I'm blanking on the name for some reason.
Oh my god, there's one
and
from
they had
that.
a Chobits one, I think, last year.
Yeah, I mean, they're just like, again, they're going off to a point where I was like, yeah, this is becoming the Funko Pop of
there's one
Japanese figures.
There's one for that Days with My Stepsister show with the girl. Just anything, yeah.
They just do anything. I mean, that's like a new show.
Still no Yume Nikki.
Yume Nikki? No, yeah. A Manatsuki Nendoroid would go fucking hard. Like, I've seen people wanting that for like a decade now.
The problem is, if they ever did make it, I would be like so critical about every little detail.
How dare you try to fucking market to me?
No, but like I'm so like, I don't even know what the word is, pedantic about like every little detail when it comes to adaptations of that particular design. I'm a huge nerd when it comes to that.
Have you seen the little custom Manatsuki Nendoroids people have made?
Yeah, I've seen a bunch. Because I also got into that in like 6th grade. And I think I tried to make my own custom Manatsuki Nendoroid at some point with like, I don't know, some other ones, but like some girl with braids.
Some girl with braids. She's not memorable. Her braids were the only thing I bought the figure for. That is a fun thing people will do. They just like almost like kit bash these Nendoroids together to make new characters.
And you can see like the limbs of like, oh, that one's from like that one anime. No, that one's from like Lucky Star or whatever.
The game of Guess Who.
Yeah. But with like body parts.
I remember one of the better ones I saw was someone did one of the girl from Your Lie in April. And it was like the hair from one of the girls from Idolmaster. The suit from, like, it looked pretty close. Like, if you weren't like comparing them side by side, you would be like, oh, this is just an official figure. And there for a while, I was like, oh, that's as close as you're going to get. And then they announced the real, like an actual Nendoroid, like last year. It's like, okay, why? Sure.
Well, we know that guy's going to be very happy.
Speaking of merchandise, was the cosplay that you got for the Miracle-chan character, was that just Dejiko's cosplay, or was that like something that y'all actually made?
Like the dress specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, that was like I think it was from Amazon. It was this just lavender colored dress with a maid. It's like a maid dress, but like lavender, and it was made of like a plasticky material. And then I cut it up, remade it into like a better looking dress. And then I cut up my bed sheets actually to make the apron and the collar. And so I sewed that and glued that myself. And then I bought this like Christmas bell off of Etsy to put on the collar. But like, you can't get bells that big without like stars cut into them for some reason, because probably the holidays. Huh. So I remember being super annoyed by that. But there's literally no other things that people sell, like at least on Etsy or something like that. So yeah, I had that that cosplay just hanging on a hanger in my dorm for like months.
I actually did not expect that you made. It looks very similar like Dejiko from Digicart. So I thought you bought like the Dejiko fucking cosplay or something. Like, I was like, oh, that's probably what they did. Save some money.
I mean, I thought about that, but the color of the dress is so different. I got so lucky being able to find at least like a shitty plasticky cosplay dress that was that like perfect, like lavendery purple color.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like an actual like cosplay material, like what people would. You buy like the pre-made cosplays or whatever. It looks just like that.
I wanted it to feel very like Temu cosplay.
So you made the dress. Where are did you make the Kagurumi then?
The mask I got from Yahoo Japan auctions for only $100. And then I painted the face, and then I made the wig out of like 4 different pink, like shitty Amazon wigs, because you can't just put a wig on it. You have to like DIY cut them up and glue them back together because the head is so big.
It's like a Frankenstein scalp.
Exactly. So clearly I was the most well-adjusted college student on campus doing all this in my dorm.
Hey, that sounds like my kind of Friday night. Just
and I love getting a reaction out of people showing the head, because it's just such a shocking thing like, oh, look at this. And they'd come in my room and I open my closet door and there's just this huge anime head.
Well, Kigurumi, I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm too American. But they elicit that kind of uncanny valley effect for a lot of people. Myself sort of included. Like I try to be, like, oh, it's someone's hobby, it's fine. I'm also kind of like, that's just kind of weird. Like,
I think it makes more
sense. So great.
I think it makes more sense when you see him like not necessarily like in person, but in like a photograph, basically, because then it's like, okay, now I understand that it is like in full 2D. It just kind of looks like an anime character,
like a touched up, like actual photo.
Yeah.
Not
Whereas
like
in person.
Not like the pictures they take when they get on a train and it's like a convention. They all just look at you and it's like you entered the wrong train.
Yeah, I don't think any of my friends don't have any photo, like, because everyone would want to wear the head and take a photo of themselves. So everyone I know like has a photo of themselves wearing the head.
Well, now they can post as their Twitter profile picture and
yeah, but then it got stolen recently.
Oh wait, what?
It got stolen because I had there was this school event called a gallery night, and you put up like your art, and you put like you could put just objects there too. And then I left my stuff overnight because for like the gallery night thing, and I come back the next morning, and just the head, everything else is there. Thank God nobody else touched like the other stuff that I put there, but the head was gone, and I was like,
they knew what they were looking at. They're like, those Kigurumi things, they fucking cost hundreds of dollars.
Yeah. But to me, it felt very like it returned to the earth. It disappeared from sight. To me, in my mind, it just went like it disappeared because the costume got destroyed during shooting, because we threw it in like a wet dumpster, which wasn't even in the shot.
Oh, we didn't notice it was raining during that.
Yeah. And the audio of it getting thrown away, we had to do in post because the microphone didn't even pick it up, so there was no point in even throwing it in there. But so we lost the costume that way, and I just kind of have always had the head in my closet. So for it to kind of disappear just out of sight, it's like, wow, the demon's defeated. This part of my life. It's
gonna like resurface in like a deep, like a dark web video or something. Someone's gonna be wearing it.
There is nothing on this planet that would make me happier than that.
Someone's gonna post some video like
blank super ADI, but it's Miracle-chan. Oh my god! Yeah. There's nothing I want more.
Now it's gonna become a collector's item for like a very specific.
You kind of touched on like some of the technical difficulties. Was your choice to film it entirely like just holding it by hand? Was that like an artistic choice, or is that kind of more just budgetary?
It was definitely an artistic choice because the camera that we were using was not suited for that kind of handheld. So there's tons of shots that I'm not happy with, specifically because we couldn't get them the way that I wanted because the camera was so huge. It kind of had to be operated by two people when ideally, because I planned to have everything handheld from the complete beginning because I was really, I've always been super inspired by the films by the Dardenne brothers and filmmakers like Eliza Hittman, who employ this kind of almost documentary handheld style. To me, it makes everything feel a little bit more sporadic and uncomfortable, and that kind of documentary edge I really like. And it's part of, because I had a style note guide that I gave to the people working on the film, which is completely extra for given the type of production this was, but I made a complete style book. And part of like the notes in that were that any movement that the character makes, the camera is going to follow that when the movement happens. So if he turns his head, that's when the camera turns. If he looks down, camera moves down, because the entire film is squarely from this character's perspective. And I wanted to make sure that kind of camera work reflected their point of view very specifically and didn't feel voyeuristic, except for the one like shot that's supposed to feel extremely voyeuristic.
Kind of raw, like, yeah. You're talking about specifically the shot kind of before they throw the costume away, right? Like in the bedroom where it's
that kind of sequence, especially when there's that wide on like them wearing the mask and the projectors on them, and it's just so humiliating. For me, I wanted that to feel like, ooh, we're extremely looking at something we are not supposed to be looking at.
Yeah. It definitely, I feel like it worked really well for like those kind of like close, intimate shots like that. Like does give it like that kind of intimate feeling, I guess. There was some like the shot where they're walking from school to the apartment. I thought was like, I was like, I could use like a more scenic shot, like a more wide shot here or something. But so I was curious if like it was just more of that was kind of the style you were going for, or if it was kind of more of a budgetary or limitation.
I definitely wanted to keep wide shots to a kind of absolute minimum because I don't know. I think for something like this, I've always hated wide shots. And again, I go back to the Dardenne brothers. They use a lot of the same kind of cinematic techniques. And I'll watch a film from them and it's like, oh, there hasn't been a single wide shot this entire film. And it makes it so kind of claustrophobic in a way that I really, really like. For granted, especially what I'm trying to go for. And so for me, the one time that I really wanted a wide shot was when we see the character in like the mask and the dress with the projector on them.
You kind of got one, or maybe it might be more like a mid shot, like when they're walking down the hallway with their friend after class. Like that's kind of, it starts off at least kind of as more of a mid range kind of shot.
Oh yeah, I mean, I didn't want all of it to be close up, but like in terms of being like a full wide, I never really wanted any of that.
I will say it does succeed in being kind of claustrophobic and isolating, given the nature of how like close it is, and also like the kind of minimal usage of dialogue. Like kind of makes it very intimate and like having to like just work through things in silence kind of thing.
Because I remember when because it was shot in the dorms at my school, and I'm in a different dorm right now, but it's the same size. And these rooms are really, really tiny. So when we were shooting the scene of getting the cosplay, closing the blinds, putting the cosplay on, reacting to the projector, we had to do that shot a bunch of times. And because the room is so small, the only people that could be in the room was like the actor, the gaffer, and someone else. And then I was sitting outside of the room looking at like a little screen, watching the shot through like my and talking through like my little like headset walkie-talkie thing. And every time that we would watch it every time I'd watch it on the little screen, I'm like, oh, like, because I'm in the other room, mind you, I feel like I shouldn't be watching this. Like it feels like watching like someone's like a security camera.
What in black and white and jittery and
like what direction were you giving like the actor for like that sequence basically?
I mean, I'm so surprised at sort of what he was able to do with what I was giving him, because he's not an actor, he's another animator in my class, and he seems like such a shy person. So the fact that he was willing to do all of this was, I had to have him read the thing like 12 times. I'm like, are you sure about this? But pretty much, I don't remember exactly what I told him, but sort of, because there was a lot of blocking, because we had to do that whole scene like all the way through a bunch of times, because every time we do it all the way through. But I don't remember exactly what I had told him, but I was just so surprised that he was willing to do, I mean, not only any of this, but specifically a scene like that.
He did a great job too. Like I wouldn't have guessed he wasn't interested in acting. I mean, maybe he is. He just never. maybe he did like theater or something and just kind of. But yeah, he did a good job. That was a good performance by him.
I think so too. Yeah.
The way that sequence plays out too, specifically when the projector comes on, like rewatching it, I was just thinking to myself, this is like very. It feels kind of Denpa-esque, like something like Welcome to the NHK, like when Sato's just in his apartment and it's just blaring that music that's just unavoidable through the walls and stuff. It had that kind of like energy to it where it's almost it's a cute thing, but then it's kind of like, oh, this is kind of like haunting and invasive in an interesting way.
Yeah, for me, a big thing that I wanted was that you hear the intro at the beginning and you like it and you think it's fun, but then as the film goes on, it kind of gets recontextualized, where by the end you've not only heard it so many times, but you're so uncomfortable that it kind of becomes like like a mantra or like something like a kind of mocking mantra. And I think that's successful by the end, where you're like, oh god, this song again.
Well, it's like what's like the final shot in the thing where like they're laying in bed and you just have like the plushie kind of just like slightly visible behind them,
just watching them.
Yeah,
I saw like
have that.
I'm just saying, it seems like you put together just a lot of like props. Like I think when like they're scrolling through their phone, I was like, wait a minute, is that just a 3D model? Did we just see briefly?
I'm glad that was at least visible enough. I remember really wishing that we did a few more takes where we can like really see this stuff more. But a few people have commented on like, "Whoa, there was a 3D model." And I'm like, "Oh my god, people saw that."
Yeah, there was an impressive. We were trying to figure out because we're okay. I'm old, and I was like, "Is this supposed to be like Tumblr?" And Psy's like, no, this is like Twitter. I'm like, no, this isn't Twitter. What? This looks like, oh, it's Threads. And we're like, with this whole process trying to figure out what the hell was.
Yeah, that was definitely Tumblr.
So do you still have like a lot of those like character goods and stuff just like lying around?
I think I gave the shirt to somebody because it doesn't fit me.
Oh, it was a shirt.
Yeah, it was
trying
a shirt.
to figure out there was a shirt.
We just watched that scene again, and I was like, "Is that a shirt or what is that?"
The problem is that there were so many props like that like I would put in like the room that I was using, because I completely like gutted my room to make it more of this character's room, and I would put them up, and I had these posters on my walls for like months, literally making me lose my mind. And there were so many shots where a lot of the posters weren't even in the film, and like there's like almost like a size of the door poster of Miracle-chan, like life size, that I have in my closet still. I pretty much got rid of the other ones because I had to put things in a storage thing moving, but like that never was in the shot. This life size poster on the door. Oh, it makes me so sad. But I still have like the pillowcase that was like behind him when he was like lying in bed, and because I didn't want to make him wear a Miracle-chan shirt like at that beginning thing. Originally, I was like, oh, he could be wearing like a piece of merchandise, but I'm like, okay, this is like a level of obsession that I don't want to make this character have.
That's fair. Yeah, that'd be a little bit like, okay, that's a little bit too absurd.
It's a little too cartoonish at that point.
Yeah. It's one of those power level deals where it's like, yeah, keychains on the backpack's fine. Having a shirt of just her face would be kind of weird.
Yeah, and that keychain I made, but then like it's barely in the shot and completely out of focus. And I'm like, but that, once again, more issue with like the type of camera that we were using when shooting it, where it's really hard to do a shot like that. It was not suited for these like walking tracking shots, which is what I wanted the film to be mostly composed of.
Especially if you're shooting in like a tight, cramped apartment, having a big. So wait, was there also like a boom mic then, like built into the camera, or was that like the audio recorded then like separately?
There was a boom operator, but we used very little of that in post, which much to the chagrin of the girl who did the boom operation. But I think the audio turned out fine. But in the scene where the character's walking sort of on like the side of the road going home, we did that like on the side of the highway during rain, like at night. And so
going across that bridge.
Yeah, so my DP was so like, because I was on like the other end of the highway talking through this like microphone, loud highway happening, and it's raining. And then she's like, "We can't do a shot like this," and I'm like, "Let's just try." Because I was so particular about that shot, and it turned out whatever. But like, you know, there were parts where I'm like, you know what, maybe I should have compromised a little bit.
I guess if we want to start getting into the reception of it a little bit, I guess it's like a preamble. I know it's like a bit of a faux pas to ask a creator like what they mean by a work or whatever. But do you want to like kind of speak on the decision to end the short the way you did?
Yeah, of course. When I originally wrote everything, it had a very similar ending to this. But then once I started to explore the characters more and I started conceptualizing the intro, I was having so much fun that I made it kind of a bit longer. And the ending that I eventually had written and was planning on making was definitely more hopeful, definitely kind of a more of like a fully rounded character arc type thing. But then when it came time to actually make the film, there was, I mean, this was made for like very, very little money that I raised. And there was so much going on with my life. And I, as much as I'm in like an art school, I go to school for making cartoons. So the school isn't necessarily helping me too much in making this thing. So there had to be big cuts when it came to the scope of the project. And so a thing that got the biggest kind of axe to it was that new, more hopeful, more kind of rounded ending. So then I decided to keep the project as the original idea, which was to have it be more of a depiction of a particular experience. And originally I was sad to see that kind of happier, a little bit corny ending go. But by the end, I was fine with the ending that we ended up doing, because what this character is going through is going to take a lot more time than to figure out what they need to figure out is going to take a lot more time than even the length of the previous idea, because this is just a small part on a much bigger journey that they need to kind of take on.
Yeah, I kind of got the feeling, just kind of reading the general discourse, that that's kind of what people were looking for, is kind of more of a conclusive one way or the other sort of ending, and kind of more of like a upfront message of like, oh, this is how this should be, or this is what you kind of, it sounds like kind of what you were explaining. But I don't know, to me, like I just immediately kind of understood, I feel like, because just spending so much time in like the recesses of the internet, you kind of come across a lot of people that kind of go through this sort of questioning sort of experience. And so that felt like a very true sort of experience that I've seen, where it's, you know, people kind of starting on that journey and kind of not knowing which way to go and kind of being stuck sometimes. Specifically, I think of like just being on like 4chan or some shit. Like you get people who get really into like K-On! Or something, and then they're like, I wish I could be the cute girl playing drinking tea. And it goes from like this weird kind of like cynical irony to kind of legitimately kind of like, oh, maybe this is something.
They're like, wait a minute.
And it was interesting because like it resonated with like that sort of moe aspect, where it's like moe is very performative. It's kind of inherently known into the word that it is fictional, right? So this sort of performativity of like gender and this performativity of like moe kind of like coming together in this way where you kind of are having to reconcile like, oh, this is something that I cannot feasibly perform in reality. Like this is an unachievable sort of ideal, and sort of having to like recourse correct, but not necessarily having the bearings to do so quite yet, right? It's like, yeah, you're not going to be Miracle-chan, you're not going to be an anime magical girl, but you know, maybe you're not quite the person who wants to go to the parties, but you could be somewhere in the, there's a gradient, there's a wide gradient there. And you just got to find the what fits you kind of thing, right? Like that's kind of what I got from it.
Because like a big part of it was almost like this costume is sort of like a skin of this character, and the way that it doesn't zip up, like they can't fit into the skin of this other character. They have to kind of be able to form their own identity of what femininity and womanhood is to them, and not this kind of a regressive idea of what it is that like not only can they not fit into, nobody could fit into.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've seen a lot of people kind of conflating this sort of unobtainable idealistic version of femininity from like a moe perspective with just femininity, and it's like it's on the spectrum, but they're not the same thing. Like
Well, it's a matter of like negotiating that and like finding a place where you can be comfortable, hopefully. And so trying to like run into like that sort of thing just head on. You may not, results may vary.
Yeah, it was an interesting sort of reconciliation of those two. I guess speaking of like some of the criticisms, have you been kind of following any of that, or did you get to a point where you're just kind of like, I can't anymore with this? Or
I mean, I wish I could say that. I'm like, of course I've not been checking. I don't care. But like, I've read like every review possible because I mean, I've never made anything that's gotten this type of attention before. So for me, any kind of reaction to it, I'm so curious about whether it's like good or bad. I think it's also because it's, you know, it's my first time ever getting this type of attention. I know people who get regularly attention this kind of way, and they just completely don't look at stuff because to them it's not like a new thing for them. But to me, this is completely like, I've never gotten a reaction like this from anything I've ever made. So it's been really interesting to keep up with not only the kind of controversy, I guess we can call it, but sort of how that's ebbed and flowed and changed.
Yeah, people will. It's an interesting thing to see how it like starts off one way, like the people kind of like paint it one way, so people kind of start going to it one way, or maybe not even experiencing it, just kind of but dogpiling, and the people that kind of experience it and got something else out of it kind of come in, and then you kind of this weird change and flow in the conversation as people kind of duck in and out of it. Like
like because I was like, as soon as it came out, I was like, all right, cool, gotta watch it. And I was like going through like the comments and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that's fairly positive. And then it's like, you know, day goes by, I go on Twitter and it's like, oh, there's like, it's controversial now.
Oh, it's on fire.
And then like literally the day after that, then I started seeing people being like, I watched it, I don't understand why people are so upset. So it was interesting seeing like almost kind of like initial reaction, response, then response to that response, and it just kind of then, you know, feeds into itself in an interesting way.
Yeah, it was so weird because when I initially posted it, after, you know, posting about it for quite a while, because I love to post about things that I work on because that's what gets me to want to work more on it. But when I originally posted about it, it got a pretty positive reaction because, you know, people had been looking forward to it. And there was one really negative thing that someone said. And I was like, oh, wow, look at that. Like the first negative thing someone said about it. Ding dong, like loud, ominous bell toll. And then the next day I wake up and it's just like completely burning on flames. And I'm like, what happened?
What did I do?
Was that discouraging at first, or like dismaying to see that kind of like strong negative response people had?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with this being my first foray into a medium that I am, I'd say, probably most passionate about, which is live action filmmaking, for me to make my first thing ever in that medium, and then it's being raked across the coals all of a sudden, and people calling me all types of like, you know, things about what my intentions were. I'm like, damn, okay, maybe I don't know what I'm doing.
Did you expect any of that kind of response? Like, did you, because obviously you're dealing with kind of a touchy subject for some people. Did you expect it to go in that direction at all, or like, where were your kind of feelings on that?
I mean, I expected that, of course, because not only had I gotten a little bit of that type of reaction from stuff I'd posted about the film throughout the process of making it, but I also got a very similar reaction from the like paintings I had done of anime girls with these like dead male bodies, which is very similar to kind of ideas that I had in the film, with people being like, oh, so like you draw little girls like this because you're a pedophile, of course. And I'm like, no, wait. So I knew that with posting the film, it was going to get some kind of reaction akin to something like that. I mean, I just couldn't have predicted it would have been the way that it was.
Listen, I'll have you know, I'm a serial killer, not a pedophile, okay?
I'm always saying this.
Listen, all right, this is a fan with a broad brush, all right? I might kill people, but I'm not like one of those kitty diddlers.
I'm on the
I might be a murderer, but I'm not a monster, all right?
I'm not a monster.
So kind of reading through, which as an aside, I've seen people like posting their Letterboxd reviews, and I'm like, is this a thing people do? They just screenshot their Letterboxd review and post on Twitter. What the fuck is this?
Something I've not seen before.
I mean, even before making this film and getting that reaction, I always thought that's a very corny thing to do.
I've literally never. I'm just like, well, I guess I'm in anime spaces, so I guess people don't really do that. But
I feel similar about it to when people like post a tweet and then they screenshot their tweet and they put it on Instagram because they're like, "Look how funny I am on Twitter."
It's like,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I would say it just has like the energy of like, you know, a kid runs up to their parent like, "Look, mom, look what I made," and it's just a exactly. Like Letterboxd review.
We're gonna put it right on the fridge next to the pictures of grandma. Just a shit post.
You see, we'll put it up next to your banger tweet that you got last week.
This is a star certified banger tweet. So reading through these, have you seen any kind of criticisms you like really agreed with? Like maybe not even necessarily like a, you know, more like it would have been more interesting to like do it from this angle, like from the camera angle or something, like more of like a deep kind of like, oh yeah, this was like almost fundamentally like something that I could have done better.
I mean, the biggest critic of the film is me, because I really was afraid, because there were so many things about making it that I wasn't necessarily the most satisfied with. Because whenever you make a film, and I think it probably applies to anything, but I can only speak for a film, there's always going to be the film that you have in your head and that you intend on making, and then there's the film that you make, and you kind of have to make a concession between these two things. And in that kind of gap between your expected film and then the actual film, there's always going to be disappointment. So for me, there was a lot of elements of the more technical elements of the way that it was shot that I was quite disappointed by, because I still had this idea of what the film was like in my head. And granted, it ends up at the end of the day as a very, very similar film. It's just the way that it's shot is a little bit different because of, you know, time, money, and resources. And so a lot of the critiques that I agreed the most with were certain things about certain shots, certain things about certain acting that I didn't direct as well as I could have, and a lot of technical elements like that. Those were the things that I'd see in people's responses, and I'd be like, real as fuck. Truth nuke, or whatever people say.
I mean, it is weird because like I feel like people approach it as if it is just like a professionally made film.
That's also really strange.
Which I guess is flattering in a way, right?
I mean, there was just so many responses that were talking about like, I hate this trend in modern cinema, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, modern cinema? What do you mean modern cinema?
I wish I had the money modern cinema had.
I guess kind of getting into some of the criticisms, I guess the writing, and in line with people making assumptions of your intentions and all that. Were you trying to? I saw a post that you're saying that Miracle-chan was meant to be a critique of these sorts of characters. Can you kind of like outline like how you're critiquing like otaku culture through your short?
I think with that tweet came after a bunch of people were calling the character design really pedophilic. And so when I made that tweet, I was talking specifically, when I say Miracle-chan, I was talking pretty specific. I should have prefaced, because like the film is called the character's name.
Right.
Yeah.
I pretty much why is my mouth not working right now? I meant pretty specifically the character, that the character is supposed to be more of commenting on these sort of elements of these types of characters rather than the film as a whole. Because the film as a whole is, to me at least, I mean, people could have their own interpretations. To me, the film is very squarely about gender and gender dysphoria. But the character of Miracle-chan herself is very much supposed to be playing into a lot of tropes and then eventually kind of using these tropes as a way of kind of making this idealized, fetishized, regressive femininity that the character is then constrained by the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Well, death of the author, so I'm not going to listen to what you just said, and I'm going to imply my own meaning and then criticize you for it.
Because that's the thing that surprises me the most, the amount of people that have these, because I'm a huge, huge fan of looking at a song, a book, a movie, and putting your own, kind of projecting yourself onto it and making an interpretation that is so specific to you. Because to me, it makes me have a stronger connection to the work. But the thing that I've noticed with Miracle-chan specifically is that people are coming up with these interpretations and then insisting that is my intended version of the film, and I'm like, I didn't say that.
Well, I guess I have seen people posting that quote about you say Miracle-chan was intended to critique it or whatever. So that's like, I guess a lot of people are taking that out of that context and kind of just reading it as like the movie is meant to be doing that, and so they were like, oh, this is supposed to be critiquing he's a Durgooner and all that. It's like, what? Okay.
I mean, I feel like I made a post like that, and if people interpret me saying that as me saying the film is that, I can't blame them. It has the same exact name. But I've posted significantly more times about how this film is about being trans, way more than I have anything about it being about otaku culture. But and I guess there's no screenshots of those, haters.
Well, it's interesting because before I watched the film, I read the interview you did with Galbraith and Megan Rose.
Crazy.
And so I was already kind of looking at it from that kind of my perception of the film had been tainted essentially by the words of the author. So I was already kind of looking at it with that perspective. So when I saw people being sharing those tweets around and stuff, I was like, well, there's this interview as well, which I think offers a much more detailed perspective on what's going on.
If it makes you feel better, I didn't read those interviews, and I still came away with the same thing he did. So it was there without knowing the interviews. Maybe I'm just not an asshole, I guess. I don't know.
How did that interview come about?
Oh yeah, that interview, I was so happy with getting to do that because I already was a fan of Patrick's work. So getting to talk with him and be interviewed by him was crazy. And I think that ended up coming about because I just got a DM from Catherine, and she was like, oh, we want to do this interview for this journal we're creating, the first ever journal about femininities. And we want to interview you and Phoebe about the film that you're making. And we're going to get Patrick on board. And I'm like, Patrick? And so it was such an incredible thing to get to do. And that took forever to eventually happen because it's not like it was an interview for a press thing. It was for an academic journal. So it had to then, after we did the interview, it took another half of a year for it to then be peer reviewed by a whole bunch of people until it was eventually published.
Cite the sources and all that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did y'all talk at all outside the interview? Did y'all kind of just shoot the shit or anything?
I mean, I've DM'd the people that were interviewing a few times, being like, "Oh, here's some updates, blah blah blah," stuff like that. But I mean, maybe I should because those people are cool.
He was really fun to talk to. He's really insightful as far as just general trends and shit like that. So
it is, yeah. I remember I would say stuff and he would be smiling and nodding his head, and I'm like, "Oh hell yeah!" Because I know. As much as people say I'm a bit of an anime tourist, I know my fair share about this type of shit. And so when I knew I was going to be interviewed by Patrick, I'm like, oh God, I'm about to be interviewed by the writer of the texts of which I know a lot of information from. I better not fuck up. It's not only am I being tested, but I'm being tested by the bitch that wrote the book.
Taking a class and the professor wrote the textbook for that class, and it's
exactly, literally, it was exactly like that. But it went really, really well. I had a really great time.
Yeah. Patrick's really, really chill to talk to.
Speaking of Moe, Do you feel guilty for liking moe stuff? Is this a self-hatred?
my self-hatred film. Oh my god. No, I love moe. I think a huge thing that I've had issue with the response to the film is people thinking that I hate moe, and that I'm very like this film is a takedown on moe when I love moe. I'm just very critical of things that I like, and just as moe is a thing in which we engage with, it has parts of it that are worthy of some type of further look and criticism. But I really do love moe and moe art very, very much. I think I always have, and I'm assuming I always will.
The asshole in me wants to be like, well, you can't technically hate moe because that's a contradiction. That's an oxymoron.
The pedantic.
It's interesting that it has had that response though, because I feel like that itself is like a kind of a new phenomenon in like English speaking like anime spaces where like you think, like even like just 10 years ago is like people talking about moe shit, moe is ruining anime and stuff. All people were like very, very just kind of like anti that sort of thing. And it feels like now it's like it's almost like the pendulum is like swung in the like complete opposite direction, where now it's like you can't criticize it at all. And if you have any like any criticisms with like moe or otaku culture or anything like that, then it's like traitor, basically.
Yeah, it's sort of like because I think the trans critics and the anime critics are in a very similar coming from very similar points where they are so used to getting a certain level of kind of persecution put on them because of not only either what they are or their interests. And so when they see a work that has criticisms of certain parts of maybe either what they like or what they are, they immediately kind of pull up a huge defensive because they're so used to having to defend themselves so much.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of an immediate like knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
Which is not it's not an unfair or unwarranted reaction, because again, like this is kind of like coming out of this idea of like people would hate, like people would say like this is like otaku shit. This is made just for like otaku. Is like a diminutive. This is like, oh, therefore it's not. It sucks. It's trash. The real good anime stuff that's not made for otaku, and it's like, if you're someone then who really likes those kinds of things, then you kind of build up that defensive shell and it's like, so if you have like it's not like moe or otaku culture or lolicon are like above criticism. I think that's kind of absurd. But then as a result of that, you then have people who are then you will just react very negatively to those sorts of criticisms, which it is like just a very interesting development. Because I'm thinking back to like Me when that came out 10 plus years ago now. It was like celebrated for that, that being this like criticism of otaku culture, and now it's like this is bad for being a criticism of otaku and moe.
Well, people even like lean into that really a bit more than like you think of like something like Evangelion, and people are like, oh, this is like taking down otaku. It says you're a piece of shit. Get out of your room. It's like, what? Wait, what? No, what?
Wait, what?
It's not going that far. Hold on.
And people are saying this is why it's so good, and now people are doing the same thing, but in a negative way.
It's very weird.
I think something I found kind of difficult to understand when I was originally getting the first kind of influx of hate about the film was, criticism of the film, was that a lot of trans critics were upset because it was very heavy-handed. And granted, there was a whole range of reasons why people had issue, but one that I saw a few times was that it was a little too on the nose. It's very stereotypically trans. We've seen this narrative before, where then the anime critics are completely like not seeing the trans angle. So it's like,
yeah,
am I being too subtle or am I being too heavy-handed?
That's always something you have to navigate with any kind of storytelling. Is like, is this too subtle where people are just not going to get it? And you don't want to be too overt where you're baby feeding people. Sometimes I guess you just do both depending on the different audience, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just goes back to what I mentioned earlier about like biases and blind spots. Like,
Yeah,
maybe the anime people are just not entrenched in that sort of trans experience or transmedia or anything like that, and so they're just consuming as the anime critique and completely just missing the whole allegory for, you know, second skin and all that. It could very well be that. It could just be them focusing on something to hate on something, because why not? I guess it's the internet.
It is the
Yeah,
internet.
it's been a slow news week. No, it hasn't, but you know,
The slow news week.
slow news week. World's falling apart.
Did you know Miracle-chan was on CNN? You know, they're talking about that. That's how slow it was.
Miracle-chan hit the second tower.
Oh, no.
I think I made that joke where I was like, "Oh no, Psy, they made us." There's a second Miracle-chan post.
Miracle-chan took down the Pentagon.
I wish that was a tweet that I could retweet.
Cut that. Speaking of like the moe, not moe, the anime people taking it as a critique of that, a lot of them keep posting the posters saying that you're anti-lolly shit, quote unquote. I think it would be beneficial to kind of outline what exactly you mean by that.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember if I remember exactly what the tweet said, but I think this is similarly when I was getting that kind of influx of criticism that this film was about to be about, because this was before I even shot the film. So, this is when it was just like I was trying to get funding for it and get attention and eyes on it. And critics thought that the film was going to be about like that the lolly aspect of Miracle-chan would play a much bigger role in her characterization, and that this character and that the film would be kind of pro lolly. So I made a post being like that I'm against lolly shit. But I feel like, I mean, I've gotten criticisms about the inclusion of things like panty shots with the Miracle-chan opening, which I was sort of on the fence about adding for a really long time, which is crazy to see the reaction people get because, like, I'm gay. But for me, I did end up deciding to just go with shots like that because, one, not only is it very, very true to a lot of sort of art from that time, but also, if Miracle-chan is supposed to kind of represent this sort of like hyper feminine, unobtainable, like digital idea of what a woman is, to me, adding an element of sexuality is true to that idea of womanhood, because she's supposed to be like a little bit like, I don't know, like, what am I trying to say? Like, to me, it was an important part of her characterization in terms of presenting her as this kind of fetishized idea of what a woman is by a patriarchy. And also, I remember talking about this once in some post I made about the paintings I had done, that for me, that sort of sexual undercurrent of a lot of these designs is part of the appeal, because it makes them just a little bit more uncanny to me. And to me, that uncanny is so, so, so interesting. It's why I love like the huge eyes and the huge smiles. That's why Miracle-chan is always looking at the camera and smiling super, super big. And then with those paintings, they're smiling very big and always looking at the camera. It's just that slight uncanny edge that then is also the sexual element of it also has that uncanny edge. And even if I didn't have any panty shots or anything, there's already a certain degree of like uncomfort with some of her poses, and like the villain characters like leotard, but like her thigh highs with the leotard, that like even if you don't have panty shots, there still is that sexual edge that's baked into the designs from the ground up. And so panty shot or not, it's still going to be there. It's just when you see a panty shot, you are able to more easily identify it. I mean, that's the intention I went in with designing her. So much of that database in mind, like pigtails, cat ears, maid dress, boots, bow. So much of that was thinking about that book that talks about the Moe database.
Yeah, you lean into it to a point where it's almost like a caricature intentionally. It's like, this is the ideal, right?
A lot of Akio Watanabe's art has an emphasis on swimsuits, and he's done art that, and other people have done art of this too. And I've seen figures of it as well, where there'll be an anime girl with a swimsuit, but then also like thigh-high socks, which is obviously the most impractical thing.
Listen, all right, they just want to stay cool, but also their legs get kind of cold. Okay, like.
See, I'm judging too hard, but for me, that level of impracticality is so interesting to me, and that's what I like so much. I wish that, like in the shot with the swimsuit, that I gave her those socks, because to me that it's almost comedic. It's almost comedic.
Yeah.
I find it so interesting, just layering on like the cat ears, the maid dress, the pigtails, just putting more things on it that just make it more and more self-indulgent, which is what so much of Moe and anime art was doing at that time, because it was that circular economy where the people who were buying the anime were the ones who were making the anime. So designs just got so self-indulgent in a way that I think is so interesting.
And it's
you go ahead, Si.
I would say it's like, there's like, you don't necessarily think about the realistic implication. Like a big part of like Akio Watanabe's art as well is like Band-Aids. Band-Aids everywhere.
And there'll be like Band-Aids over the socks.
And it's like, is she okay? Was she running through like a patch of thorn? What happened? You're not necessarily like thinking about the realistic like implications of that as much as it's just like, I don't know, she has a lot of Band-Aids on. Oh.
It's just piling on things that you like and tropes that you like on top of each other.
Yeah, which is such an interesting way to approach character design.
Absolutely, yeah.
What were you saying to that?
Shit. I'm trying to remember what I was thinking.
Well, in the meantime, I was reminded of the fact that Mumi and I were talking about before this, we had an idea for a sequel.
Oh, wow.
Where the cosplay outfit is in the trash can, and like the next day like Jumanji drums, and like a kid walks up and like finds the costume and takes it. Which I guess kind of just happened since the mask got stolen.
Yeah. That sounds like a Goosebumps, like the mask, the haunted mask type situation.
Like a post-credit scene.
It just goes full on horror. And then it could be like a commentary by how some people feel like they need to like perform femininity that's put upon them, blah, 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 blah.
Man, I cannot fucking remember what I was going to say. It is just gone. Holy shit.
Oh my God.
Well, I meant to. You mentioned the people critiquing like, oh, this has been done before. This isn't really treading new ground. Like, I never understood those critiques. It's like, yeah, nothing is really treading new ground. Like, how many stories do you think there have been? Like, I
think my biggest issue with, because I mean, it's not like I'm above critique or anything, but something I heard a lot was acting as if it's derivative of Jane Schoenbrun's I Saw the TV Glow, which is a film I really love. But we had actually shot, the whole thing was written, animated, and shot like months before that film ever came out. But then there was a huge span of time because I had to also raise money for post-production. So the film turned out how I intended it to turn out. But then I remember watching I Saw the TV Glow, which was great. And being like, oh shit, there's a lot of thematic overlap. But I looked at that less as like, oh shit, people are going to think I'm derivative, and more as like, there's a lot of overlap in, queer experience. And because I'd actually been very inspired by Schoenbrun's previous film, We're All Going to the World's Fair. And that was a big influence on Miracle-chan. So it's interesting that their film after that then had so many kind of thematic ties to what I was making. I mean, obviously there's no actual overlap because I'm assuming Schoenbrunn does not know I exist. But that was just such an interesting thing. And also, I'd written the film completely, And then I started to, when I was in like the production stage, I wanted to really, really get into trans femme literature. And so I read like the quintessential like baby first trans femme book, which was Nevada by Imogen Binnie. And in Nevada, there's a scene where a male presenting character buys like a dress on the internet, and he like closes his blinds and stuff, tries it on, is disgusted, and then like hides it in his closet forever. And I was like, this seems familiar. But again, I'm like, well, this just shows that there's a lot of universality in this experience.
Yeah, it's more like a converging, because like a lot of people have like similar, especially if you're in like kind of a niche space, like you're gonna have converging experiences, right? Like,
and at risk of poking the bear, there was a trans filmmaker who I think is fairly well known, and I think her review of the film was pretty much that it was derivative of her film. But I've always had her films like on my watch list, but I've never actually seen any. So sorry, girl. But I do want to check out her work.
No one.
But I mean, that's also just kind of like what makes it relatable, though. Like, I think I posted in one Discord, and a number of people were like, "Oh fuck, this was just me in high school," or "This was just me in college," or stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, it's that you kind of quote unquote run that risk if it's also going to be relatable to people.
Yeah.
I'd say the same thing about being open-ended in a way. Like, you know, that should make it more universally kind of relatable, because it's like, oh, this is a more general experience, but some people are using that opportunity, that space, to then kind of make a negative reading of it, I guess, where they're like, oh, clearly it's saying this now.
There's a lot of people that aren't even trans who have seen the film have told me, like, you know, I'm not trans at all, but I really, really I really connected with what this film is about and what's going on, because I myself have had trouble with like body dysmorphia and feeling like I can't live up to this like imagined idea of what I should look like and who I should be, and sort of being disappointed and feeling so shameful. So even without being trans, I mean, I'm glad that people have been able to connect so much with what I'm trying to do here.
The kind of universal, like the just general experience.
Yeah, because I think there's universality in literally every experience. Even if I tried to make something that was very, very intended to be very particularly about gender and being trans, I think there's absolutely, even if you're not trans, going to be a universal kind of feeling in there, and something that can be taken away.
It reminds me of the queer readings of like horror films, where it's like they kind of encapsulate that experience of otherness and kind of being under threat
at all times.
Yeah. You can you could choose to take whatever out of what, like, I mean, like if someone wanted to take your film and say it's about how we need to move to Mars or something, I guess, I guess that's a reading that's valid, but I don't know where you would get it from, but
like one of my favorite movies to come out of, I think it was last year, was this one film called Red Rooms. And for me, when I watched that film, I'm like, I don't care what any of you people say. This is the transest film ever. I don't care about I Saw the TV Globe. This is the trans film of the year. But it's like about a girl who's obsessed with like getting access to like child gore on the internet. And then everybody else is like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no. But I'm not gonna like assume the director's intent in any way.
Right,
but to me,
right.
You know, I have my own personal connection to a lot of the material in that film, and so I'm gonna project like hell onto it, to the point where people are like, "Did we watch a different movie?" It's like listening to like a breakup song by an artist. Like she's like, "Ooh, I hated Ethan," but then you're like changing the name in your brain to be like, Ethan, Christopher. Yeah. She's singing about me and Christopher.
Close enough, you know, Ethan.
Yeah.
As long as you don't call me Shirley.
Yeah, it's close enough that you can project anything on most things.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever gonna remember that point I was gonna make.
Oh well,
it's just gone.
It's over.
It's all dust in the wind.
R.I.P. Damn.
Well, I guess then in that similar sort of vein, then. What do you think then has like made it seemingly like fail. Like it's resonated a lot with some people, but then also like failed to resonate with a lot of people as well.
I think it definitely got introduced into the wrong audience at a pretty early point of its release, like literally a day later.
Yeah.
I'd heard someone put it on 4chan. I have no idea, but I think especially reading Imogen Binney's Nevada, that was, I think, the first, maybe not the first, I don't know exactly, but I remember people talking about it as if it was sort of the first novel written by a trans woman for a specifically trans audience, and that it alienates anyone that isn't part of that audience. And so I really, really admired that kind of insistence on alienating people that aren't part of the in-group and making art specifically for that in-group. Because so much of other trans art was made by people that weren't trans and by people that were sort of speaking to people that weren't trans about like, this is what this is. Rather than like, I'm speaking to you from the perspective of you. And if other people don't get it, who gives a shit?
Right.
And so I was very much inspired by that kind of thought process. So I feel like just naturally a big audience of people are just going to be alienated by something trying to do that. I don't know how successful it was, but I guess it did end up alienating quite a few people. But because if you get too, if you want to kind of appeal to the largest group of people gets too strong, you're going to end up not speaking so specifically to that specific group that you want to speak to.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why I've had a bit of success on the internet making art, because I tend to make things that are super, super from the bone and almost overly personal. And so there are people that see my work and other things that I've made, not just this film, where they're like, it feels like you're speaking directly to me. And sometimes that results in some kind of parasocial things, but people respond really, really well to feeling like they're being spoken to in a way that other people don't understand. And so with this film, I wanted to speak to that type of person that I've been and that I know is out there and that the main character is. And if other people don't get it, like, okay. Like, I hope you could at least appreciate the film, but I was pretty adamant about just speaking to such a specific group.
I guess it kind of ties into like the expectations of like people feel like there has to be some sort of specific message one way or another, as opposed to like leaving it kind of more open-ended. Do you feel like art, I won't say that art has to have a point. Doesn't seem to encapsulate quite what I'm saying, but that you kind of had to have some sort of like transparent moral or something, where you should come out and directly say like, oh, this will get you out of your funk. You should aim for this ideal, or being trans isn't for you, or like some message, whatever side of the spectrum that like, do you feel like art has to have that, or do you feel like it should just convey an experience? Like you don't necessarily have to have a point to it. The point could just be the experience of consuming it itself.
I think it all just depends on whatever the work is, and then what the intention is behind it. So I think it's totally fine to have art that doesn't have a kind of concrete moral at the end. To me, this film does, because of my own interpretation of it. Like, I see it and I'm like, I have my own takeaway of what sort of the messaging is, I guess. But I think what's great about making short films or short stories is that you get to, it feels like more of an open space to just play with ideas and play with theme, and not really needing to tie a bow at the end. Whereas I feel like if you're making something that's much more of a either time or financial commitment, like seeing a feature film, people are going to want more of a satisfying conclusion. But when you're making something for free, that's such a short commitment in terms of time, then it's like, I just want to see someone play with an idea, and I want to make my own kind of inference from what I'm going to take away from it.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of ties back into the whole biases and blindness thing, where it's just like, to me, it's like art's just almost like a kaleidoscope, where you kind of just have something and people take away different things out of it, right? And they can all be equally valid. Some of them could be in bad faith or good faith or what, but you're kind of expressing a certain experience, be it your own or a perceived other's experience, and other people will then see reflections of those experiences and be able to draw kind of inferences or sort of anecdotes for themselves and then their own experience. And that's kind of how you identify with art, right? It's just you have to identify it with the only experience that you really know is that's yourself, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I
feel like a lot of the response reminds me a lot of when I would make my mom, when I was in high school, I'd make her watch like these like weird French art films that I would like. And she's like this like conservative Catholic woman. And I would force her to watch like these like crazy ass French films. And there were so many times when characters, like young female characters, would do things, and she'd be like, "When I was a kid, I wasn't doing that." And I was like, and I'd have to be like, "Mom, you're not the character." And so for me, that feels like how I feel about so much of the response. Like, I wouldn't do that. Like, okay.
that is a lot of criticism of shows. Is I wouldn't. They're doing something stupid. I wouldn't do that. It's too stupid. It's like people do stupid shit all the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very, very funny. My mom's very similar in that way, where she like, oh, all these animes sound interesting, but I just can't identify it because they're all 2D and they're not real. I'm just like, okay, sure.
Because some people just have that. Like some people can't imagine like an apple with like a certain kind of lighting or something like that. Some people just
like an apple spinning in their head.
Sometimes it doesn't click for people.
Yeah,
I can't imagine an end to this podcast.